do solemnly swear.
Oh, you George Washington.
Inaugurations aren't just fancy ceremonies, they get super awkward too. When two people who've been publicly trashing each other for months have to play nice, things are bound to go wrong. I've got a few wild stories for you, so let's look at some of the craziest moments in inauguration history, shall we? You know it's going to be a great one when your president's first words to the nation are more Game of Thrones than Kumbaya. In 2017, Trump's inaugural speech, titled American Carnage, wasn't about unity, it was about fate. Basically the Purge Washington edition. Even George W. Bush, who's seen some things, turned to a friend and reportedly said, "Well, that was some weird shit."
After me, I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
But wait, there's more. The Trumps were political rookies, so when Melania showed up with a gift for Michelle Obama, a Tiffany box, Michelle had no clue what to do with it. And then came awkward glances. And guess what was inside the box? A picture frame, empty. Let's call it a metaphor for something. Yeah. Biden's inauguration, a historic day filled with hope, unity, and, well, Jennifer Lopez bringing some spice to the ceremony. She stepped up to perform a patriotic mashup of This Land Is Your Land and America the Beautiful, and she crushed it. But of course she didn't stop there. In the middle of her heartfelt performance, she threw in a surprise shout-out in Spanish. I mean, we couldn't even process the song, and then this?
Bajo Dios indivisible con libertad y justicia para todos. Let's get loud.
But then, because this is Jennifer and she knows how to own a stage, she casually slid in her iconic line, "Let's Get Loud," from her hit song. Yep, right in the middle of a solemn inauguration. Some people loved it, while others like me and you were crying in the corner. She literally just remixed the nation's playlist. Twitter, of course, went wild. People joked that J-Lo was seconds away from turning the Capitol steps into a full-blown dance floor.
The belief that the rights of man come.
John F. Kennedy's inauguration was iconic, but it wasn't without its hiccups. First Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson botched his oath saying, without any mental reservation whatsoever, completely skipping purpose of evasion. Then Robert Frost, America's poetic rock star, showed up to recite a special poem, but the sun glared off the snow so brightly he couldn't read his paper. He winged it instead, because that's what legends do. Also, the podium caught fire. Why? A heater malfunctioned. Yep. But all of that's a footnote. JFK's speech, it was a masterpiece. Ask not what your country can do for you. You know the rest.
Sub-freezing temperatures, hundreds of thousands watched the ceremonies in front of the Capitol.
It's one of the dangers of having these inaugurations in January. I mean, it's so sad that what we remember William Henry Harrison for is...
William Henry Harrison gave the longest inaugural speech in U.S. history, over 2 hours long. The guy was 68 years old, standing outside in freezing weather and deciding to be a hero without wearing any coat. And hold on for the shocking part. A month later, he died from pneumonia. You heard it right. Now, historians say the speech itself didn't kill him, but let's be real. Standing in the cold for hours at this age was basically tempting fate. So yeah, the first big lesson of his presidency, know your limits, and maybe bring a jacket next time.
4th, 1829, Washington, D.C. Andrew Jackson is inaugurated as the 7th President of the United States of America, and then he almost dies. No, it wasn't at the hand of an assassin.
Back in 1829, Andrew Jackson threw what might be the wildest White House party in history. It was his inauguration, and instead of keeping things classy, he decided to let everyone in. No guest list, no problem. Around 20,000 people showed up, ready to turn the White House into Party Central. And guess what? It got messy.
The whole ordeal began at the end of Jackson's inauguration speech, when he made the freshman mistake of inviting the entire audience, 10,000 or more supporters, back to the White House.
Muddy boots ruined the carpets, people climbed on furniture like kids at a playground, and expensive dishes didn't stand a chance. The inauguration became a cinema theater really quickly. Jackson himself got stuck against a wall in the crowd and had to sneak out before things got even more out of hand. The White House staff came up with a genius plan to restore order. They set up tubs of whiskey on the lawn to lure the rowdy guests outside. It worked because free booze will always win over a crowd. But the house was left looking like a frat house after a weekend bender. So what'd we learn from this? Maybe keep your parties a bit more private, or at least hide the good furniture.
Tomorrow is President's Day, a day when we honor our nation's greatest leaders. And a perfect opportunity for Mo Rocca to tell us about the man considered one of the worst.
Franklin Pierce's inauguration in 1853 was probably the saddest one in U.S. history. Just a few weeks before, he and his family were in a terrible train accident. Tragically, his 11-year-old son Benjamin was killed right in front of him. It completely devastated Pierce and his wife Jane.
Complete without our 14th president, Franklin Pierce, the only president from...
When it came time for the ceremony, Pierce couldn't bring himself to swear his oath on a Bible. Instead, he used a law book, which was pretty unusual. His wife didn't even attend the inauguration. She stayed home, convinced their family was cursed. I mean, you shouldn't feel you're cursed when someone dies in your family, but honestly, it's hard to blame her for feeling that way. Pierce was deeply affected by the loss, and it cast a shadow over his presidency. He turned to drinking, which was how a lot of people back then tried to deal with grief. But it didn't exactly help. His time in office wasn't very successful, and his personal struggles only made things harder. And drinking reminds me of this other president.
Mr. Vice President, President Johnson, Vice President Humphrey, my fellow Americans.
Mixing farm animals and inaugurations? Risky business, Richard. At Nixon's second inaugural ball, a rooster from a farm exhibit escaped and terrorized a socialite. Wait a minute, this is going to be hilarious, I know. The bird was eventually caught, but its legacy remains. That time a chicken upstaged Nixon. Oh, and in 1969, anti-war protesters tried to inaugurate a pig at the National Mall. That's right, a literal pig. And guess what? Tickets cost $2 for the best seats, $35 if you want a premium pig viewing experience.
We meet again as upon a like moment 4 years ago, and again.
Eisenhower's inauguration started frosty. He ghosted Truman's breakfast invite and skipped the usual pre-ceremony handshake. Then at the parade, a cowboy lassoed him with permission from the Secret Service. Thankfully, nothing screams Commander-in-Chief like a little rope trick on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Mental reservation, and with the determination to do to the best of my ability.
At Grant's 1873 inauguration, it was so cold that soldiers got frostbite standing guard. And the inaugural ball, a literal death trap for canaries. Hundreds of the poor birds, meant to symbolize good vibes, froze to death in their cages. Some claim it was gas lamps, but either way, it was raining dead birds. Adams was so salty about losing to Jefferson that he skipped the inauguration altogether. Instead, he hopped a public stagecoach out of town. Can you believe it? If only my ex had this much fear of losing me. The two frenemies didn't talk for 12 years, then made up through letter writing. Both died on July 4th, 1826, hours apart. And what were Adams' last words? Jefferson survives. Except Jefferson had already died. Poetic to the very end. So now you know presidential inaugurations are sometimes inspiring, often ridiculous, and always entertaining. So which of these was your favorite awkward one? Do let us know your views in the comments section below. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.